2017, the best prospect in hockey wasn't the guy who's now a two-time Norris Trophy-winning Stanley Cup champion. It was someone who isn't even in the NHL anymore. His name is Nolan Patrick. NHL Central Scouting ranked him number 1 overall heading into the draft, ahead of Nico Hischier, the player New Jersey ended up taking first. Then, at 21 years old, right when most young centers take their leap, everything stopped. A disorder nobody saw coming wiped out an entire season, and he was never quite the same player again. Today, we're building the career the evidence says he should have had, right next to the one he actually got. By the end, you'll understand exactly what that cost him. To understand what was really lost here, you have to go back further than the draft, because Nolan Patrick wasn't just a top prospect, he was hockey royalty. His father, Steve Patrick, was a first-round NHL pick who played 250 games in the league. His uncle, James Patrick, played over 1,280, more than 2 decades in the NHL. Another uncle made it too. His mother played volleyball for Team Canada. This wasn't a family that hoped he'd make it. This was a family that expected it. Brandon took him 4th overall in the WHL draft. 2 years later, at just 16, he was WHL Rookie of the Year. Then came the breakout, 102 points in 72 games, a WHL championship, and in the playoffs, he was even better, 30 points in 21 games, named playoff MVP. Scouts weren't just excited about the scoring, it was everything else, the size, the hockey IQ, the way he protected the puck and played on both ends of the ice. The comparison NHL evaluators kept reaching for was Anze Kopitar, a big, cerebral, two-way center who does it all. But even in that championship season, there was a warning sign nobody wanted to look at too closely. Patrick played through a sports hernia during Brandon's title run. He had surgery right after. His draft year should have been a coronation. Instead, injuries limited him to just 33 games. He missed the World Juniors entirely. And it didn't matter. Even on a fraction of a season, the CHL still named him top prospect. NHL Central Scouting still ranked him number 1 overall. The talent was never the question. The question was what would happen when a team actually had to bet on him. But the team that would make this decision wasn't even supposed to be in a position to make it. Philadelphia entered the 2017 draft lottery sitting 13th. Their odds of jumping to the 2nd overall pick, 2.4%. They got it anyway. That put them in the middle of the closest debate of the draft, Patrick or Nico Hischier. NHL Central Scouting had Patrick ranked number 1, Hischier number 2. When NHL.com polled 14 scouts before the draft, 9 picked Patrick. This wasn't a direction that looks close only in hindsight. At the time, more scouts wanted Patrick. Then, 10 days before the draft, Philadelphia's own medical staff examined Patrick and found another hernia-related issue. He went into surgery on June 13th, with the draft barely a week away. General manager Ron Hextall didn't blink. He later said finding the issue actually gave the organization more clarity, in that there was, in his words, no hesitation taking Patrick at number 2. On June 23rd, New Jersey selected Hischier first. Philadelphia took Patrick second. Dallas, Colorado, and Vancouver rounded out the top 5. This is the part of the story people get wrong. Philadelphia wasn't fooled by a hidden risk. They looked directly at it and bet anyway. And for a while, that bet looked like it was going to pay off. Because for 2 seasons, it looks like Philadelphia's bet was working. Patrick made the Flyers straight out of the draft. He debuted against San Jose, scored his first NHL goal 6 days later against Nashville. There were bumps. A hard hit in late October kept him out for a stretch, one of several minor absences that would show up over the years, but nothing that looked like the beginning of the end. Because down the stretch, something clicked. Over his final 32 games that season, he put up 21 points, including 10 goals. He finished the year winning over half his faceoffs, advanced stuff for a 19-year-old center. Year 2, the trend continued, 13 goals again, a new NHL career high in points. And once again, the second half was better than the first. 20 of his 31 points came over his final 34 games. Added up, and by age 20, Nolan Patrick had played 145 NHL games and scored 61 points. Not a superstar yet, but a real, still ascending NHL center, exactly on the timeline scouts had projected. 2 years in, the bet still looked smart. Then, right as he should have taken the next step, everything stopped. At 21 years old, the exact age most young centers take their leap, Nolan Patrick didn't play a single NHL game. The reason wasn't a hit or a slump or a healthy scratch, it was a migraine disorder, something that had never fully sidelined him before and something no amount of toughness or training could just push through. When the NHL resumed play after the COVID shutdown, Philadelphia left him off the roster anyway. Management was clear about why. This wasn't about being ready for a few playoff games. It was about his long-term health. He didn't play an NHL game again for almost 2 years. When he finally did return, he scored in his first game back. For a moment, it looked like maybe, the story was going to bend back towards what everyone had projected. It didn't. In his first 2 NHL seasons, Patrick scored at a rate of 0.42 points per game. After the lost season, across everywhere he played afterward, that rate was 0.21. This isn't a story about decline. The math is almost exact. Whatever Nolan Patrick was on his way to becoming, the lost season didn't just interrupt it. It cut it almost precisely in half. Philadelphia saw the writing on the wall. So did Patrick. And in the summer of 2021, both sides tried to build him a way out. In July 2021, Philadelphia traded Patrick to Nashville. Nashville immediately flipped him to Vegas. The move reunited him with Kelly McCrimmon, the same GM who'd managed him back in Brandon. Patrick called him one of the smartest hockey minds he'd ever worked with. On paper, it looked like exactly the reset he needed. It didn't play out that way. Upper body issues limited him to 25 games. In February 2022, he suffered a concussion during a Vegas game. He came back one more time, March 24th, 2022, on the road in Nashville. He hasn't played an NHL game since. That September, Vegas announced he'd miss the entire following season. McCrimmon didn't frame it as a hockey decision. He framed it as Patrick needing to be healthy in his day-to-day life before anyone talked about hockey again. To this day, his status is genuinely unresolved. The 2023 report described him as having quietly retired. Patrick pushed back publicly and said he hadn't made that call. As of today, he's simply not on an NHL roster, and nobody said the word retired and had it stick. In 2022, NHL.com redid the entire 2017 draft with the benefit of hindsight. Cale Makar, the player from our opening line, went number 1. Miro Heiskanen went 2nd. Elias Pettersson, 3rd. Nico Hischier, the man Patrick was ranked ahead of on draft night, landed at 9th. Nolan Patrick was ranked 27th. Somewhere between number 1 and number 27, his entire career disappeared. Not because Philadelphia made a bad decision, because a smart, defensible bet ran into something nobody could have scouted for. Nolan Patrick was never a bust. He was proof that sometimes the process and the outcome just don't agree. Patrick's story raises an obvious question. What happens when we rush to call this too early? Because right now, there's another consensus number 1 pick who fell on draft night, and he's already being called a bust years before his career is anywhere close to over. So if you want to know whether that's actually fair, or if we're about to repeat the exact same mistake in real time, go watch How Good is Shane Wright Actually next.